All right, welcome everyone to the Solana Foundation Validator discussion, March 14th, 2024. You'll notice the name change. We had a discussion in the last call, and to help better distinguish this call from the community-led call, we'll now call this the Solana Foundation Validator discussion. So pretty packed agenda today. First, another note about the Validator call schedule. We mentioned it last time as well, but just to reiterate, Validator updates. A quick note about educational workshop. There's one coming up next week. Then we will talk about Agave. Rex St. John from Anza is here to talk about the Agave fork and answer questions about that. We'll talk about SIMD 96, the fees, priority fees being 100% for validators instead of 50% burn, 50% for the validator. That's a SIMD that has been proposed and accepted. If there's any updates on timely vote credits, I don't know if there's anything to share there, but we'll have some time for that. And then any other open items that people want to talk about. All right, so jumping in, last call we discussed the overlap of the community-led call and the foundation call. So to better manage that, the Solana Foundation Validator discussion will only be the second Thursday of every month. So going forward, the next call will be April 11th and then May 9th, etc. I think I'll create a public calendar to kind of help manage this because it's, I guess, not as regular as it was before. Every 2 weeks, I think, is a little easier to track than every second Thursday of the month. But if there's any other ideas on how to better signal and manage that, let me know. Yep, great. Chris, who's running one of the organizers of the community-led call, is saying in chat that he'll publish the dates as well. We could probably share the same calendar to make it easy. So the community-led call is every fourth Wednesday of the month. That call is not recorded. It is run by the community, by Chris from Chainflow and Max from H2O Nodes. So I think this will be a good balance of the foundation running some and the community running others. And we'll kind of see how that goes. Maybe in the future, it's all community-led and the foundation kind of takes a back seat, which I'm open to. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Yes, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, sure.
So we have recently, in January, we started using that server for Testnet, and according to rules, we have to get some rewards each month.
I'm going to stop you there. So this is a TDS question. It's not useful for the group. So I'll answer those in Discord, but I don't think questions about payments are going to be useful.
Yeah, I had a question about the TDS. So to whom I should reach regarding this problem, sir? Can you please help me out with this issue?
Yeah, so there's an AMA tomorrow at 10 Pacific. I can answer questions there. I can also answer questions if there's time at the end, but I don't want to hold up the call for one specific payment issue.
Okay, tomorrow on Discord, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you. See you tomorrow then, sir.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. So Validator updates 1.17.26 is now recommended for mainnet beta. Reiterating here that the rent exempt split feature has been activated. So when a stake account is split, the new stake account that it is split into needs to have the rent exempt amount in it before the split can happen. I'm flagging it because there was, some issues with some community projects, and I just want people to kind of be aware this maybe affects validator operators, maybe does not, but your delegators or some projects that you work with might be affected. So just be aware of that. For delegation program operators, 1.17.26 is now the min version that will be enforced by Epoch 590. And for testnet, 1.18.6 is the recommended version. the min version currently for SFTP is 1.18.5, which will be enforced by Epoch 612 for delegation program operators. So if you're in the delegation program, 1.18.5 by Epoch 612. Anything to add there, Will, on updates for either Testnet or Mainnet?
Nope, I think that covers it.
Okay, great. Any questions on those? All right, next educational workshop will be March 20th, 2024, 1800 UTC. We still don't have a topic, so if anyone has a topic of interest, please let me know. I'm thinking of doing something RPC related, but again, if operators have something that they're interested in or want to talk about, we'd be happy to hear. Anybody have ideas off the top of their head now? Okay, then I will, cool, yeah, a vote for RPC. I will come up with something. If you have ideas in the next few days, please discuss in MB planning on Discord. All right, now we'll hand it over to Rex. Rex is going to talk about the Agave fork and answer questions.
Thanks a lot. So a couple weeks ago, I believe now, we announced Anza that the Solana Labs repo is being mirrored over to Agave, which is a renamed version of the Solana client that's going to live on Anza. We've released some documentation, including a FAQ, a tweet, and then a Medium post, plus we've been in Discord. And there's going to be a multi-month-long process where the main Solana client, that repository, is going to get transitioned over to Anza. And what's happened is Anza's Agave branch or fork has become the active lead repo, where Anza's engineering team is going to be maintaining that. And we're encouraging folks to begin submitting any pull requests to that repo rather than the older repo. We're also seeing a number of questions people are asking us, which repo should they use? I think we're not actively encouraging people to use the Agave branch at this time. We're saying stay on the Solana Labs repo for now, and then over the next few months expect to transition over to that if you're I've got this FAQ here. I can share this into the chat. We've got Will to answer further questions. I mean, does anybody have any questions on these topics? I'm just going to start sharing some docs here on these topics. So, any questions about any of this from folks on the validator side? Nothing? Okay. I don't have anything else. Will, Tim, anybody?
Yeah, I can add just a little bit of detail. We will be recommending that people running nodes switch to using Agave sometime in the next couple of weeks. The switch will be hopefully pretty painless. You'll have to change the binary names in whatever scripts or systemd configs you have from Solana Validator to Agave Validator. But otherwise, the the version numbers will match exactly, and the functionality will be identical between versions, between a Solana validator bin and an Agave validator bin that have the same version number. You can expect identical behavior. We will recommend the switch pretty soon, and then you will have up until version 2.0 to actually complete the switch. That's when we will stop publishing releases out of the existing repo. We expect that that will be sometime this summer. So you'll have, I don't know, a couple of months, maybe 3 months to do the switch, which is hopefully plenty of time to update your scripts and systemd configs.
There were some questions because as part of this process, 6 crates were renamed. So that caused some folks from the Firedancer team, probably the Gito team, to have to do some modifications to their client work. I did a tweet about what those 6 are. So I gather if you've made that change, like you've pretty much already done the majority of the heavy lifting, but at some point that might become an issue, but it would be affecting very few people. Stan?
Yeah, I have a question. So what's the ETA on the documentation update then? And like the Solana, so Solana install script will be renamed to Agave install, right? Is it right?
Yes, that is one of the 6 crates that has been renamed.
Okay, okay. And the full documentation update, like what I mean about the docs at Solana, when that will be updated to reflect the switch to Agave?
I don't have an ETA on docs. We have docs in a handful of different places, and we're trying to be thoughtful about how we roll out changes there. We still have some work to do. There will be some comms in the announcements, the announcements that I put out that are just, please upgrade to the new version. Those will start including a reminder to switch over to Agave with some quick instructions for how to do it. We also need to update our persistent docs. We're aware of that. I don't have an ETA. Sometime in the next month or two.
Any other questions? Saba? I probably mangled that. Is that how it's pronounced?
Sorry, just was a mistake.
Okay.
All right, if there are no other questions, we can move along. Thank you, Rex and Will. And yeah, we'll also keep you updated about Agave changes. Okay. All right, switching gears to SIMD 96. So SIMD 96, for those who are not aware, is a SIMD that has been proposed and accepted. It essentially rewards 100% of the priority fee to the validator. Currently, 50% of the fee is burned, similar to transaction fees. This is an economic change, and Max flagged that this is probably worth going through governance at some point. I guess I want to open up the floor to thoughts on process or the SIMD itself, or any of the above. Yeah, Liam, go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So a few things. One is that so there are a few things with this specific change that I'll just kind of put out there. One is that this was not actually like an intention. This was not done very intentionally, or at least there's very little documentation of this being intentionally done in the first place. One of the things to consider here is that there's about 200,000 SOL, give or take, just under that are emitted every epoch. And in the last epoch, about 1/20th of that was burned in fees, leading to me to believe that this is kind of a very much a small amount. Some may disagree with me that that's not a small amount. nonetheless, this change is more focused on like, hey, the effect of the 0.1 percent deflation that we get from this versus like the cost to users it's like the cost to users is really high. It's literally doubling their transaction costs, and encourages people like Jito or other MEV platforms to come up and build their own side payment scheme. So I'm happy to put this through governance if that's really necessary. My one comment about governance is that we need to establish a governance process, and that's going to take a lot longer than I think people think.
Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Liam, for your comments there. I think a lot of that information would be really useful to have in the SIMD, because several validators have said that they feel there's a lack of explanation and justification in the SIMD for the reasoning as well as the repercussions. And I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with your reasons, but they should at least be in the SIMD versus just be like, the proposal is this. Everyone's like, okay, let's get this merged, and there we go. I very strongly feel it must go through governance. It doesn't matter that it is an obvious thing that people are likely to approve. That's a slippery slope that easily can lead to things ending up being bypassed around governance, because some people feel that is obvious when others don't. And it is an economic change. I didn't quite catch the number you said. Was it 200,000 SOL?
200,000 SOL were emitted in the last epoch as part of inflation rewards, give or take.
Sorry.
If you like,
can you just say the number again?
200,000, 196.
When we say inflation rewards, is that including the regular inflation rewards?
I just extrapolated out you take the current inflation rate of around 5%, you take that times the current supply, and then you divide it by the number of epochs in the year.
No, yeah. So I thought you stated the amount of priority fees that were.
So the amount of fees that were burned in one of the most recent epochs, which was the most priority fees that have ever been burned, was just over 10,000 SOL.
Okay, right, got it. Yeah. So the thing is, objectively, and it's obviously something that will benefit validators. So most people will vote for it, but that alone isn't enough of a reason to not have a governance process around it. And that's exactly why there is a debate amongst validators about governance. And sometimes there seems to be kind of a parallel, separate conversation happening in the SIMDs. And there are some SIMDs that specifically even speak to governance that are not connecting. So we need to find a way to connect those conversations.
Yes, I would say one thing just to that, just to address it. I think the best thing that could be done as far as when you guys have something concrete about governance, we should also put that through the SIMD process, because the amount of rigor that the SIMDs have to go through, and the amount of transparency that there is, and the amount of okay, we're going to get this really standardized how we want to do governance every single time we want to do one of these kind of votes. It would be great to do it via that, to establish that process there. I imagine there's some actual consensus changes that have to happen. Sorry, keep going.
Seems a little back to front to me, to be honest. Governance ultimately is what stake weight agrees on. So there should be a governance vote on adopting a process, just as there should be governance on adopting SIMDs. But I think I've kind of made my point.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we want to put governance through SIMD. Personally, I feel like SIMD is more for protocol changes and less about how we vote on changes. That seems like I agree that it should be established, or there should be at least some sort of preliminary decision on what it should be, but I don't think it should be a SIMD. Zentetsu. Sorry, Zan, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief because I think a lot of people have their hands up. My understanding is that the primary benefit of this is that it prevents side deals, which I didn't know what that was until it was explained to me, which is if a user is going to pay X fee and half is going to get burned, they could just offer 0.75 times X to the validator directly. The validator gets more, they pay less, and they get the same priority. This is assuming the validator has implemented some means to, you know, identify their transaction and bump its priority, which is totally possible. I think it's likely to be a very small issue right now because not many validators are going to make that kind of change. But certainly a protocol change that prevents that seems like a good thing. I don't know that I agree that users are paying 2x the priority fees they'd pay. I don't know why that is part of the justification, because they're competing against each other. They're basically auctioning, they're basically bidding. And whether it got paid, you know, all of it burned or none of it burned, they're going to pay the same amount because they're bidding against each other. It's just how much goes to the burden and how much goes to the validator. Just wanted to make those 2 points. I also agree on the governance point, just because I think we're trying to establish a process here, and I think this falls under that process. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. To address the point about governance taking longer than we may expect, I don't know. I don't know that I would agree with that. I mean, we've been at it since July of last year, I think. Yeah. And I think we all realize that it's a deliberate process that's going to take time. I would also say that regarding scope, I posted a link to the Git book that Laine started back in July, talking about the what of governance. And even from early on, we were talking about including anything that impacted the economics of the network as something that would be within the scope of governance. I think we're at a point where, you know, we should decide whether or not we want to align the SIMD process with this governance process that is admittedly under development. Because I think if we don't make that decision and move forward with it, we'll probably be back in this position, you know, soon, because the SIMD will have moved through its process. The governance process may or may not catch it, and, you know, we'll probably end up in the same spot. So I think, you know, soon would be a good time for us to just really decide whether or not we want to align the SIMD process with this governance process, and if so, you know, then we can take steps forward in that regard. But in the meantime, I do feel that something like this would fall squarely within the scope of the governance process we're talking about. And if the fear is that we can't get a vote going fast enough in order to make a meaningful vote on the SIMD process, you know, I think we could probably get this going pretty fast if we agreed that we wanted to actually hold the signaling vote on it. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Yeah, Liam, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying with there's like a technical point that I don't think I connected, right? So let's say for SIMD 96, right? There's actually a feature gate, right, that would have to get activated. And right now that feature gate is controlled by like an individual. Soon there's already a SIMD that's changing that so that it's a multi-sig between the client the client implementers. I honestly, like, if I'm my personal opinion is that, like, I really don't like that. I'd much rather have governance do the actual activation. That's where I say the SIMD comes. There's a SIMD that has to come into play, which is like, okay, how do we like do the feature activation based on the result of a governance vote? You see what I'm saying? Is that a little bit clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's a lot of what we've been testing out actually with the timely vote credits. We've had a very similar discussion related to the timely vote credits proposal, or SIMD, and pending vote. So we'll get there, but maybe that's a segue there too. I'm not saying we're done here, but yeah, that is something we've been talking about quite a bit related to timely vote credits, and that's probably the model by which we would move forward, assuming, you know, that we hold the signaling vote on timely vote credits, which looks like we will.
Right.
Can I say a few more words?
Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate that me saying that this needs to go through governance is not me saying this shouldn't happen, right? Like, it's just purely a procedural thing. And the whole thing about does every SIMD need governance, or should governance itself go through a SIMD? I see them as kind of two parallel systems of policy making. I don't want to reuse the word governance necessarily. Government, maybe. Every governance proposal doesn't need a SIMD, and every SIMD doesn't need a governance proposal. Because there are a lot of SIMDs that are technical and kind of implementation specific that don't necessarily make material changes to consensus or economics or anything of that sort. Those are SIMDs that should go through governance. At the same time, governance could touch on things that aren't necessarily technical. And SIMDs feel like something that are more kind of on the technical side of things. So I think the two kind of exist in parallel, and we shouldn't tie them together too firmly. The FeatureGate question is kind of a separate thing, and I feel like that's it's good that you mentioned that, Liam, because a lot of the debate around governance I've seen on the SIMDs has always addressed feature gates, or mostly addressed feature gates, and I feel like maybe there's a bit of a disconnect in how different groups are thinking about governance. Where for the core engineers, governance is focused heavily on the activation of features and basically triggering these forks and feature sets. Whereas I feel like the validator kind of conversation around governance that's been happening is a more soft form of governance that also speaks to kind of approving ideas and concepts rather than triggering the actual change itself on chain. So I just wanted to raise that as well as something to think about, as maybe there's a bit of a disconnect in how maybe we're thinking about governance as different things, and that's causing some confusion. Personally, I don't think every feature gate should go through full governance. I think it's going to slow us down too much. We should have a multi-sig, yes, but not just the client teams, like 15, 20 people, and you need half or whatever. And that should include some community members, RPC teams, validators, and the core engineers from the client teams.
A quick response to that. Yeah, I mean, I can see the rationale behind not tying every feature activation to the governance process. If that's the case, then I think what we would need is a mechanism to catch the SIMDs that we feel do warrant a vote early enough in the process, so that we're not, back where we are today. So I don't know what that looks like, but I think the main point listening to you, Michael, say that is that we would need to catch these SIMDs early enough in order to provide meaningful feedback and hold the signaling vote in a way that doesn't unnecessarily impede the progress of the SIMD progressing.
I'd agree with that. I think that SIMDs that have clear economic implications like this should be flagged. I'm not saying that I don't have a great mechanism for doing that, but I think the sooner that the validator community and the voting community knows about it, the better. Yeah, Liam, go ahead.
I think one question that I have is that does the validator community actually really care about how these things end up getting activated, or do they care more about the substance? Because one of the things that I think about a lot that is kind of how do I align what I work on with what you guys want, right? And because at the end of the day, if I write some code and then we get it feature gated and all that, and you guys don't want it, I've just wasted a lot of time, right? And so and that's fine, right? That's the kind of the idea. And so part of me thinks about how to is it important that it's caught early? And it sounds like that's the case, that we do early vote and then the actual activation is less important. Or part of me likes the idea that I should be really focused on making sure that people really want something before I work on it, so that by the time it reaches the feature release, like the gate activation point, like I've already got everybody on board. So when they go to vote for it, right, I've got everybody on board, right? So we're ready to go, right? So maybe that signaling vote is actually, you know, it is important, but like, you know, maybe you need both, right?
Yeah, Zan, go ahead.
Yeah, I tried to make this point in Discord. You know, I think that as a developer, it is very important to get some idea that what you're going to work on is going to be accepted before you devote resources to it. And I offer that we as validators, once we have a voting process in place, ought to be very welcoming to anyone that wants to request a vote on the, you know, general temperature in the room on, you know, a particular feature. It's not the same thing as guaranteeing that it's going to pass when it actually goes to a vote where people actually have to sort of make a decision that could affect, you know, the reality of the chain. But I totally think that that should be a service. It's not something you have to do. You could go ahead with the SIMD and do whatever you want, you know, and put as much effort as you want into it, assuming you're going to succeed when it comes to a final vote. But as an advisory vote, I think it's totally, you know, a valuable thing to have. And I think it should be part of the, you know, the mechanism that we support when we have a more complete voting system. So.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, my take is that the voting should kind of only happen on the SIMD stage to avoid that wasted effort. And that goes back to the whole multi-sig, and then the multi-sig is tasked with kind of approving and activating it. And I think the SIMD should then take on more of a kind of a in-depth spec. So then you say, okay, here's the SIMD that provides a spec of a change with all the key parameters that is voted upon in governance. Then governance says, yes, we want this change as provided for in this spec. And then the developer goes and builds according to that spec. And then third-party auditors, like Neodime or whoever, should audit the spec, including, audit the implementation, including saying that, yes, it matches the spec from the SIMD that has been approved, as well as the multi-sig that activates that feature, which is responsible for it. So, yeah, so what I'm saying, Zan, is that governance is just saying, yeah, this is a spec we want. And then the multi-sig responsible for activating it must ensure that what's built matches the spec. Because we have to also avoid adding too many votes and steps that require full governance, because people are not going to participate and we're going to have governance fatigue.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that the lightest touch governance can be from a personal perspective, the better. If we have a vote, like a signaling vote and then a activation vote and a lot of different steps that all require a lot of people to vote, I think that could very quickly lead to not as much participation.
If I may, like, I think I'm totally supportive of this. Like, I think we should try it out with it sounds like, I mean, I think there's a thing to talk about TVC, which is the other one, but like, it sounds like maybe 7096 is like an easier place to actually start with this, and actually try this out. If you guys want to, you know, you can finally land on kind of a scheme for all this and start doing it. I'm also like, as to the one other point which was made, which was like, okay, we got to flag these things early. Like, there's no current track in the SIMD process for economic. Okay, so there's already a 30. Okay, so there's no track yet for, I think, specifically economic proposals, which would make it very easy to actually filter these out and set up like a notification. We could certainly do that as well. I think it'd be great to do it for both 7033 and 96. That is to say, we're still going to continue implementing these things because they're so trivial to implement, but we're just not going to push, like, we're not going to obviously activate or do any of that at this time. Just same with the same thing happening with TVC.
Yeah, I just want to also comment on the whole discoverability thing, and I think this came up in Discord a few days ago. Validators, I think, the ones interested in governance, myself certainly, can try to pay better attention to the SIMDs, but I also think at the same time the authors of SIMDs should, as part of publishing a SIMD, have a thought track along, does this require consultation at least to assess whether it should go through governance. And maybe that's something in the SIMD template that can be added near the pub as kind of a question, like, does this require governance consultation? And if it does, we should have a channel on Discord, or we can use MB planning for that, to, where whoever's proposing a SIMD says, like, hey guys, here's a SIMD that might be of interest, might require governance. Please come and comment on it, just as a way of connecting the two communities, because we kind of live in different places, the engineers on GitHub and the validators mostly on Discord. So I think a bit of effort from both sides to try and create that transparency and communication can really help a lot here. And I agree that this is a SIMD 96 is a great candidate for kind of a second governance vote after TBC.
Is there a planned venue for where this vote is happening? Or can someone, I guess I could check the Discord, right? It's all there, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think Michael linked to it. There's a timely vote credits channel that has been discussing it in the Solana Tech Discord. There's also the Solana Staking Alliance Discord that tends to go into more depth and kind of more discussion about the process.
Someone asked about what I decided to work on and how that informs some of these things. With respect to like the SIMDs and whatnot, it's mostly I have a lot of draft SIMDs and various things, but because we're still building out everything, I don't spend a lot of time on it. I think most of the things that I'm thinking about are mostly about how do we it's a lot of it is economic problems, unfortunately. And so when I'm thinking about what to work on next, it's the small changes, the one-liners, the 96 that can potentially have a big impact. I could sit on a problem for 3 months and try and find the minimal kind of cut that would improve some of these things, improve some of the economics, improve some of the development that doesn't affect the timeline for financing.
Thanks. That was my question. That's a helpful start.
Any questions about the specifics of 96? Or is there any other, maybe Lucas or anyone else that wants to add some context to why the change is useful?
Yeah, I think it's generally a useful change. I think getting more of the payment in protocol between this and I think 109, which I mentioned we'll discuss on a future call, are pretty important. So I guess I'm in support of it, but also I think all the governance discussions are good points, and agree with Liam that this seems like something that we can start with governance and kind of get the skeleton up. And I know a lot of people have been working on that, and it will be an iterative process. So seems like a good place to start.
Cool. Just looking for 109 in the, I assume that's not accepted. Is that correct?
It's not yet.
Correct. There's some changes that I need to make to it, but the general thesis is there.
Yeah. Add that in the chat. Okay, if there's no other questions or discussion points on this, we could move on to timely vote credits if there's any updates there. So yeah, timely vote credits we've talked about a couple times in the call. The proposal is now up on the forum. I'll put that in the chat. I'm curious if there's any updates that Zantetsu or anyone else wants to give on the process.
No, I mean, it's been it's the kind of process that goes in fits and starts, I think. And right now, I've got the proposal up, and I think it's going to take a little time before we get some momentum on people actually, I think most people who are active have already kind of posted their opinions over and over again. So what I'd love to see is people drumming up interest from other validators that they know that haven't expressed an opinion or even been made aware of this thus far. So if any of you know or have friends or any relationship with anyone that runs a validator, if you could just alert them to the fact that this is happening, that would be a great help. Yeah, and the links that Tim's going to provide will be what you should give them to let them know where to go to find out about it and start talking about it. We've got basically roughly a 2-week period now of what's the discussion period. And after that, we're going to capture stake. This is all an ad hoc process, by the way. A lot of this is going to be based upon just trusting the people that are running this vote are honest. We're going to do a capture of the stake, and it's not even clear technically how we're going to present that and how we're going to verify it. But hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll have a good idea on how to do that. And we'll have one epic where people any validator can verify that the stake weights that we capture are what they see also, because anyone can run Solana stakes and capture the stake weights. And maybe I'll even provide a script that can turn that into, some very clear summary of what the stake weight is, and then verify that the stake weights that we published, we expect to use, match what you would see. Then everyone can feel confident that we got the right weights. And then I think it's probably likely to be the case that Michael Hubbard is going to take over and actually set up all the vote accounts and the tokens. We haven't talked about that, but that seems natural given that he's done that before. And then we'll have the vote for, I think, 3 epics. And then it's nice now, round number, 600 is the target epic for this whole thing being completed now. It's a very nice, easy number to remember. So we'll know on epic 600 whether or not this whole process worked or didn't.
Great. Any questions about the process or the proposal?
I'll add one thing that just like from the finance perspective, like we've had this implemented for quite some time now, and so we're like this is not a feature that would actually, like, a lot of the new features have a potential to delay our ability to launch. This is not one of them. We've had this implemented for months.
Great, I'm very glad to hear that. I hope you know that a constant got changed kind of last minute. The 8 got changed to 16. Because I did collect, and one thing I haven't put in that proposal, but I will put in the discussion, I have collected, and again, you'll have to trust me because like I have written programs that collect this data, but it's very difficult data to collect all the votes and then tally up all the latencies and then compute that into what the API would have been. It's a very, very complex process. I should open source some of these tooling, but even if I do, it's very unlikely that many people are going to be able to devote the resources to really extracting and displaying this data. But at any rate, upon analyzing the data, it seemed like TVC might have been a little bit too aggressive at the 8 parameter. It was pushing some vote accounts up to like 10% extra credits, which is really huge. That's much more than even voting mods achieve. So it got kind of reduced in half in its effectiveness. I will, and I haven't done this yet, put more details in the Discord pointing to my data collection, which you guys can all challenge, talk about. Let's get aggressive on this. And if you think I'm presenting bad data, let's start talking about that and trying to find ways to get people confident in the effects that TVC will have. But anyway, long and short of it is, I hope you guys know that that change occurred and that you need to update that one constant. Hopefully it's a constant for you. So.
Okay.
Great. Any other thoughts, questions? All right, that's all of the agenda items. Any other items people want to bring up?
I mentioned at the beginning, MEV wars. This stuff is happening. Are we all aware of this? Like, there's some real shit going down. Do we all know about this?
Say more.
Well, Jito provided this great MEV system with a self-imposed mandate to have positive beneficial MEV for the ecosystem. And the mempool technique that they enabled was causing a lot of sandwich attacks and, well, not attacks. It's all very debatable whether or not which parts of it are healthy, which parts aren't. But it was greatly increasing the amount of MEV because, a lot of these searchers were finding ways to take all this token mania and extract a lot from it. And a lot of that was due to pushing, slippage to the maximum and then extracting the most out of it. And there's a lot of really sophisticated techniques I'm not even aware of. But, Jito took the responsible step of shutting off their mempool to try to curb some of this. But now it's all getting pushed out to other validators and private groups and little cabals. And I've read lots of comments and DMs from people saying this is happening, this group is happening. I think there's someone else on the call on this call who, Dennis Cabinets, who may want to talk about it because he's trying to make or that person is trying to make a separate MEV system. And I think most people that are doing this want to re-enable some of these techniques. So we have Jito, who's trying to put the brakes on so that we all do kind of the right thing. We have a lot of people that are just kind of going Wild West on it. So I don't know if people are aware of this, but it's all happening. And it's all comes down to which validators support which system. So it's up to us as validators to decide how this is going to play out. And I personally am sticking with Jito at the moment because I feel very confident that they're making the most responsible choices. But as time goes on, other factors are going to come into play, and we're all going to have to make a lot of decisions. So that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that topic? I've been getting DMs pretty consistently about different clients that are popping up, and I don't have enough context on some of them, so I'd love more opinions. Yeah, Liam, go ahead.
I think I'll have to say the cheeky thing that is just that if you want the mempool back, just rebuild Jito. Just do it. It is pretty, seems to have been pretty easy for Lucas and his team. So we could just build the whole thing back up, make another one, make 10 of them. I think, but in all seriousness though, it is quite a task. I think it's is an interesting choice for Jito to make. As far as to the number of bundles that we're seeing, the actual inclusion outside of MEV transactions has kind of gone up a little bit. I need to go pull the data for that, but I've seen that behavior. I think some of this is going to be unavoidable, and I'm kind of excited to see a little bit of the what happens when someone else makes some sort of mempool style product.
So someone has already. Yeah, Trent, go ahead.
Oh, there you
go. So without the mempool, where are searchers actually getting the transactions from? It's got to be leader local MEV at that point. It should be very minimal, I would expect.
Yeah, I can comment. Lucas here from Jito. So most of it's just I guess it's responding to state changes on chain and not bundling transactions pre-execution. That's a lot of I guess the main point is getting access to block space fast, or we see several people that are batching multiple operations together, some of the market makers that are providing liquidity on the Phoenix order book.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that sounds much less like ecosystem negative than taking existing transactions and then manipulating the economics around them.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Well, the SFTP could play a role here because, as was briefly discussed today, these things are very hard to detect. You can't know who's doing what. Maybe we need really good tools for identifying what transactions look like they were match some criteria that may be debatably good or bad for end users, and then running that periodically to see what validators are doing it. And then the SFTP can say, hey, our validators aren't allowed to do these things. It's going to be a giant shit show though, because proving these things out, identifying, I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, you're going to be able to get a very, you know, clear ability to even enforce any of this stuff. But if anyone has sort of stake behind, you know, preventing this, I think it's SFTP, because I think a lot of validators that gather together in a cabal to try to do this are nodes that are in that, you know, that size range that the SFTP supports. I don't know how to put it more politely than that. So yet another thing for you guys to worry about.
Yes.
It's basically infinitely obfuscatable too. Like you just stick it behind a program and then like shift that program around. Like you won't necessarily see it in the top level transaction.
Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, yeah, it's very hard to kind of tell if who's participating in these things, right? And I just want to kind of maybe say the obvious, but validators have a responsibility towards the integrity of the chain and the state that they are validating. And I believe part of that should be protecting the information and the flow of transactions of your users, which are, you know, all the users. And participating in kind of ad hoc clubbed together mempools and running software and clients that are not tested out and audited, and just kind of running arbitrary code on your validators to try and capture that little bit of extra yield is very dangerous for your users, but also potentially for yourself. You could be leaking your own keys, your identity key, for instance. And in the long term, it could really negatively affect your reputation. So I'd be very careful about participating in anything of this sort. If it goes sideways, your reputation as a validator will be shot. And I would hope that Stake does respect that and respond to something like that.
I have one thing there that I've been throwing it around. And it's a technical change, but I think I can describe it in a way that's simple enough. Is that one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is moving a lot more of the actual node software off of the actual node and into verifiable on-chain programs. What that would do is, like, for example, we could actually on-chain verify that, oh, this block was built, you know, in a manner that was, this is really hard to do, but it is like really kind of a long-term vision. But like, oh, we could move all these like very critical pieces to actual on-chain programs and verify that people, you know, actually did something that actually benefits, you know, that encourages some behavior that we actually want, as opposed to executing some arbitrary software. Now, someone will always find a way around it, but this is more like, okay, can we like kind of continue to push the bar quickly by moving some of these things onto on-chain programs, like core parts of the node software.
Can you name some specifically? I'm
Yeah,
just trying to think
so
of which areas you're thinking of.
So for example, like the networking code, right? A lot of that is, you know, is really complicated, but some of the like quintessential gossip protocol and all of that could potentially be enshrined on chain with a mechanism for detecting when someone's doing something that they shouldn't be. Or, for example, it's hard to define for this specific use case. A good example, I'm trying to think, but I'll get back to you.
Got it, thanks.
All right, we're almost at time. Any other closing thoughts before we end it?
Is there any, I mean, I think we can all recognize also that for whatever the reason, it's not running as well right now as it has been. Maybe too much token stuff going on. What are the next steps to, like, assuming this stays continuous, how are things going to improve? I mean, is there any thought on that? I mean, maybe it's too big of a topic for the last 2 minutes, but like, what are we going to do? Just wait for it all to roll, you know, for all the interest to die down, or something we could do more immediately?
I was waiting for someone maybe more knowledgeable to answer. I think that 1.18 provides a lot of potential benefits. So, and that's rolling out within the next month or so.
I mean, a lot of the problems are down to while stake-weighted QoS and priority fees have been, effectively deployed by the protocol for months, not much of the ecosystem has actually adopted them. So we've been working with some teams to get priority fees implemented so that they're actually able to post competitive fees with their transactions. And we're also working on making stake-weighted QoS easier to set up. Because apparently not many have even touched that or really know how to configure it in the slightest. So we're working on a few things there. There are also a few improvements that we should see coming in 1.18 around quick and some of the mechanics in there. We found a few bugs in the dependency that we use to implement the protocol, and we're trying to get those patched upstream so we can get the improvements in our logic as well.
What we identified, and I'll state just one thing, Lucas, but one thing that's just really broad. We found a lot of issues in just the general pipeline of the node, kind of from the networking stack. But this is both in collaboration between us at FireDancer and a few other people in the ecosystem. We found a bunch of little things dotted around that kind of prevent the node from doing the right thing economically, which is price the best transactions first. That's a simple oversimplification, and I think Trent just kind of outlined really like the kind of the result of some of that searching.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say something real quick. I think 118 should help a lot, and the new schedule in there is very good. I've looked at some of the blocks that have been produced by those clients, and they look much better and more organized in the way that you would expect them to look compared to the current validator. And I know Liam, team, and others have been doing good work on Quick, and there's still a lot of improvements, but I think 118 in the new optional, I'm not sure if it'll continue to be optional, but I think getting people on 118 and fixing a lot of the Quick related bottlenecks will be very helpful.
So the new scheduler will be optional in 1.18. We will give some more guidance on, letting folks voluntarily pick that up and run it. We just want to run it for one release, optionally off, to make sure that it behaves as we believe it does in real world situations. We are running it in some places and it seems to be mostly fine. Obviously, there are some places where it does worse than today, but overall, it is significantly better at packing blocks. But yeah, we'll give guidance on how to turn that on, just a CLI flag. And then so long as nobody complains during the 1.18 period, it'll be activated by default in 2.0.
All right, we'll end it there. Thank you, everyone. And we will meet again a month from now, second Thursday of the month. I'll socialize a calendar as well, so it's easier to track. Thanks all.